Welcome back to another video. Now, right now you can get £7,500 to rip out your gas boiler and put a renewable generator in your property, an air source heat pump to heat your home. Now, air conditioning systems are also classified as renewable generators. They can heat, so do you get the £7,500? Let's find out. Right, let's start with the definition of a renewable device, because a big part of this grant eligibility is that the device you install needs to be able to generate more energy than is put into it. Now, what this means is if you put a kilowatt of energy into that unit, you need to get a multiple of 1 out. And I think the base minimum is like 2.5 times. So you put 1 into your house and then you pull more out for the 1 you put in. How good was that? Anyway, now an air source heat pump, that achieves that because they have a SCOP, a seasonal coefficient of performance, of around 4 to 4.5. So 1 kilowatt in, you get 4.5 kilowatts of heat. But air conditioning condensers can also achieve this. Now, this unit on the wall here, that is an internal air conditioning unit, but it doesn't just cool, it heats. So I can turn it on with the controller. We can set it to heat mode, and that is going to start warming up this room. Now, when it's doing that, it's going to be taking energy from the grid. Let's say it's using 1 kilowatt hour to run it for 1 hour, and it will produce 4 kilowatts of instantaneous heat. So you put 1 in, you get 4 out. That is your generator qualification, because you are generating more energy than you put in, and therefore it's a renewable device. Right, we're doing pretty well here because we've met that generation status. We can take energy, multiply it, and we can produce heat. So this unit is heating this studio, but if it gets too hot, we can also turn it on to air conditioning mode, because these AC units aren't just single use. Like your air source heat pump, that's just gonna do space heating. But with these, we've got multi-function. So we've got cooling, we've got air cleaning as well. So if you have like allergens, maybe it's dusty, they have filters built into them that will drag that out of the room. Great if you have hay fever. And also you can have it on fan mode or dry mode. So if it's super humid, you can suck the moisture out of the room using this unit. So they're not just limited to heating, they have all these additional features. They're a generator. Now, there is nothing stopping you ripping out your wet central heating system where you have radiators and a boiler, and you could just have these units dotted around your house, and when it's hot, you can cool it down, and when it's cold, you can warm it up. Safe. Now, this isn't the most glamorous shot stood on a cupboard next to this unit here, but there is a reason for it. What I want to discuss is the differences between air source heat pumps and air conditioning units, because the most popular product that's claiming the buzz scheme, this £7,500 grant to rip out your boiler, is an air source heat pump. Now, air source heat pumps are connected to your central heating system, so usually your radiators will be down here. They emit heat into the room, but that's what this thing does up here, because when you turn it on, it blows air into the room. So the fundamental difference between the two systems, to keep it simple, you've got air-to-air, air conditioning units, and air-to-water, air source heat pumps. But the differences don't end there, because if you're going to rip out all of your radiators, you're not going to go for an air source heat pump. You're going to have an air-to-air, air conditioning. How are you going to heat your domestic hot water? Because with an air source heat pump, you're going to have a tank. All air source heat pumps have to have a hot water cylinder. You can't have like a combi air source heat pump. You need to have a separate storage vessel to charge water from the air source heat pump. That's generated renewable again, because you put energy in, you get like 3 times out for hot water, and it is stored. You can use it in showers, taps, wherever you need it. With air conditioning, air-to-air units, you're not going to have any way to blow warm air onto a tank of water to heat it up to use it for your shower. So you're going to have an alternative way to put hot water in your property. Now, you can have a standalone, unvented, pressurized hot water cylinder with an immersion, and you could be on a cheap overnight tariff. So you could charge it up using renewable energy at night for like 7 pence a kilowatt hour, charge 230 litres of water, keep that, and that's going to be a cheap way to have hot water into the property. but it's not a renewable way. Although you might be accessing cheap renewable energy, an immersion is a one-for-one device. So you put a kilowatt in and it produces a kilowatt of heat to warm that water. So it's not a generator, could be a problem for the buzz scheme. So that's our hot water dealt with, but there is another consideration, and it is if we're going to be removing our wet central heating system to replace it with an air-to-air, air-conditioned heated property, then do we need to put one of these units in every room where there was a radiator, like in a downstairs loo? No, you don't. What you'll find with these sort of units is if you have like 5 of them in a property that where you would typically have 9 or 10 radiators, because you're heating the air much more efficiently in the home, that you'll find that air travels round, keep things nice and warm, and you don't need little radiators not doing a lot in rooms where you don't need to have them. So the answer to that is no, you don't. You do need to consider it. If you've got a massive house, you're probably going to need more than 5 units, and that is multi-split, where you have one external unit and then multiple internal units. They are limited generally to 5 internal units to 1 external unit. So you might have to have 2 external units if you need like 7 or 8 internals. Now we're going to answer this grant question very shortly, but before we do that, let's look at the gross costs of both systems before any discounts or any grants are applied. Now the first thing to point out is that both systems, because they're renewable generators, renewable devices, they qualify for 0% VAT on both the product and the installation. You're not going to have to pay 20% VAT like you normally would on a gas boiler installation, so that is an upside. Now, like for like costs, an air source heat pump typically installed, that's a wet system with upgraded radiators, you're looking around 12 or 13,000 pounds before the grant from the government, which is £7,500. Now with air-to-air units, those multifunction air conditionings, to have 5 of those installed in a typical property is going to be about 10 grand. So it's already cheaper to have air-to-air in your property than it is to have an air source heat pump. But we also need to factor on top of that the cost of having a hot water cylinder. Now, if you've already got one, obviously you don't need to buy another one, but if you have a combi, you would have to have one installed. So we've got that VAT reduction, that's saving us 20% of the overall project cost. But what we don't have when it comes to air-to-air right now is the buzz scheme. So on those air source heat pumps, you're gonna get £7,500 off the government for nothing, just for having a renewable device, a renewable heater installed in your property, and that's gonna come off that gross cost. So if we look at like a £12,500 gross cost, the net cost after that buzz scheme is going to be around 5 grand to have that system installed. With those air-to-air units, you're not going to get that.
Come up to meet you, tell you I'm sorry, you don't know how lovely you are.
You're not going to get that 7,500 off the cost of your air conditioning installation.
Bless you.
You're going to have to pay that full 10 grand. You're going to pay the full 10 grand to have that system installed. Now, if you have less units, obviously it costs less money. Like in my property, I have 2 units and that costs about 4 grand, and that keeps all the bedrooms nice and cool in summer, and we just sort of top the heating up in winter. Because I have solar, I don't really use my gas boiler, I just use these 2 units to keep the house warm. Because it's a modern house, I have solar. Rather than exporting, I use it to heat or cool the property.
Go.
So you So let's summarise what you can and what you can't get. So if you're having an air source heat pump, one of those wet systems installed, and you're prepared to rip out your gas boiler and have that in place of it, then you can get a £7,500 grant. You're probably going to pay about 5 grand net of that grant to have that system installed. It's going to do your heating, it's going to do your hot water, it's going to be renewable, and it's going to be really efficient. If you want the air conditioning units, you can't get a grant. You still get 0% VAT. That is equivalent to like a 20% saving. A 10 grand system would be 12 grand if they were charging VAT, but you can't get the buzz scheme right now. Is this gonna change? There's lots of talk of it. I think the government's a little bit reluctant because they see it as a luxury item, doing cooling, doing heating, doing air purification. to me feels a bit daft. It is classified as a generator, a renewable device. It qualifies for 0% VAT, so why are we not including it on the buzz scheme? They're pretty fixated on this whole air source heat pump movement, probably explains some of the politics behind it. Will it change? Who knows? But it doesn't mean that air-to-air is a bad product that you shouldn't buy, because you have all of those multifunctions. You've got heating, you've got cooling, you've got air cleaning. You can keep your gas boiler if you want that element of safety, you want that redundancy to heat your property. You just want to fit these throughout your home. It is still a brilliant product. The demand for air conditioning has gone through the roof. We have been so busy installing these up and down the country. For people with solar or battery systems, it's a total no-brainer. Give up a little bit of export to be comfortable, to cool your property in summer when you've got loads of generation anyway, and in winter, give a little bit of your battery to heat your property. If you're having a quote for solar, ask about AC. But if you don't have solar, you just have a regular property, no renewables, then installing solar isn't expensive to do and it's pretty cheap to run. If you're going to cool your property in summer and you want your unit on for like 4 or 5 hours, it's a renewable generator. So if it's a 4 kilowatt air conditioning unit, it's going to use 1 kilowatt hour. A kilowatt hour is 27 pence. If you have it on for 4 hours, it's going to cost just over £1 to cool your property down. Would you pay that? I would, I do, when it's absolutely roasting outside. Thanks for watching, and if you liked it, give it a like on the screen there. And also, are you subscribed to the Heatable YouTube channel? Because if you're not subscribed, you might miss videos like this. And if there was a grant, you could have lost £7,500. And it's free to subscribe, it helps to grow the channel, so please check you are and put your bell notification thing on so you can watch the videos and find out loads about solar systems, heating systems, renewable, air conditioning, whatever you need. See you next time.